All right. Hey guys, welcome to the sixth part of the Building and Environmental Analysis Dashboard. This week I am going to wrap up the first version. Um, so as I've been building this, I've been able to really get into what I think is needed, as well as work along some people in our environmental or regenerative design group, and really just been able to see that um, while we want this to be a simple tool, we also want to be able to dig into the weather data in a more detailed fashion for those who find that useful. Um, so I'll show you what we have so far over the last day. I've been working a little bit on, I guess, building the heads-up display, so the user interface, which will be pretty much overhauled in version 2, just to provide that um, ability to dive a little bit deeper. So when you open the file, you'll see nothing is shown on our viewports, and there's no heads-up display um, or user interface to interact with. And so just to launch that, we'll toggle um, this Boolean, and you'll get the user interface, and you'll see that you have two expander containers that are yellow, and that's just because there's a warning telling you that there's no EPW file found, and that there's no chart types selected. Um, so we kind of ran through how that um, error reporting works, and so it's really just um, analyzing the values coming out um, of the dashboard and comparing them to what we expect. And so, um, yeah, so then that is just fed through a filter that then allows the information to change. And so this first error, it's not perfect. If I selected all of these or selected that text and then updated it, it's going to remove the error even though you don't have a EPW file link in that field. Um, this was the best I could do for now. Um, as far as figuring out how to match the data, I couldn't get a empty index to be replaced with a null value, and so that's something I'm going to be working on. If you know anything about that, go ahead, comment in the um, chat window or email me, um, find me on LinkedIn, whatever you need, or even on the Rhino/Grasshopper forums. Um, reach out there too. Anyways, so that's kind of the error reporting and how all that works. And then for the chart types, it's a similar um, process. Let's pull the panel out here. So what I'm doing here is getting false readings from all of these um, from the value listener, since none of these are checked. And so when I sort that list, it's going to give me all zeros. Um, but really what I want to get is a 0 or 1, true or false, um, because I don't need a warning if only one is selected. So I sort that list, I reverse that list so I get the highest value at the top, and then I just remove, um, or I separate out that first index because that's the one that will really matter. And then that's the one that's toggling the stream filter and then setting the expander properties. Um, so yeah, that's how that's all working. Um, I think the only thing I built offline was potentially the chart types, and then for sure the load EPW file. So what that's doing is that's just triggering the download EPW weather file. I'd love to be able to get a 3D model of the Earth and map the file um, data to the location on the world map, but I am not entirely sure how to do that, and that exceeds my, my programming, visual scripting knowledge. So, if you know, maybe drop a hint or send me in the right direction. And so that's going to, when I click on this button, it's going to launch the Ladybug Tools EPW map, which is very helpful, and it's actually gotten a lot faster from the first time I've used it. And I'm in Sacramento, so I'm biased, and I'm just gonna click on one of these data points, and then I'm gonna click on copy link to clipboard. I'm gonna move this out of the way, and then all I need to do is select this text, delete it, and then paste. When I'm done pasting that URL location, I'm going to want to tap on this update button, and that's going to load the EPW file in Grasshopper um, so that all of this information or all of these components will be able to process the data. Um, so that's really what I've worked on. The chart types similar. What I did there um, was just create two checklists and then put them in a horizontal stack, um, and then just listed out the names of the charts that we wanted. Um, so, and that allows me to trigger other stream filters depending on if um, those chart types are selected or not. All right. So I think that's probably enough about going over the user interface. Um, what version 2 will begin to look like is instead of having this expander for chart types, I'll have expanders for comfort hours, wind rows, hourly temp, and some charts. And then we'll have conditional statements, um, maybe put the analysis period in each dropdown so that you can change the analysis period for each chart instead of as a global setting. That way we can maybe dig into that weather data a little deeper if desired. Um, and so this user interface will probably get a little bit bigger. Not probably, it will get bigger, and just add in some additional features. Um, so um, yeah, so we can look at the chart types, or let's go through, I guess, the user interface that we built. So I'm going to pull Grasshopper away, and I'm just going to leave the user interface over here or the layers panel. Um, so I'm not completely done building out the um, UI connection with the graphs. That's why you see um, part of the comfort um, chart here in the 3D environment. We'll get to that uh, after we go over how this environmental dashboard is working. So you already saw that I can upload that um, EPW file and just grab it straight from the website. I'm going to leave the analysis period alone, analysis settings alone, and then I'm just going to show you how these work. So I'm going to click on the Windrose chart type, and it's going to process the data through Ladybug, and then it's going to throw up that Windrose on um, the viewport right here. Um, and so now I have that information up there, and it's showing me that the colors there is showing the temperature. So that's pretty cool. Now we can have that um, on all of our viewports, and it will even work on a um, floating viewport, which I actually find has been more stable as it rarely disappears on you, which is nice. All right, just gonna exit out of that viewport. Um, uh, I'll just start to toggle all of these on, and you'll see they're gonna pop up in different corners. I was hoping to get them all in the left-hand side, uh, but the charts had to be compressed to a size that was not helpful. You wouldn't really be able to read the legends and I guess see that information, which I think is a critical piece to these charts. So we have our hourly temp um, chart up in this corner, our sun chart, which in future versions will be able to pull out the hottest suns uh, and really kind of dig into all of that information. I just got to think a little bit. There we go. And then comfort hours. You'll see that when I toggle comfort hours, it's actually not going to bring anything up on the viewport, but it's going to um, populate the 3D environment or 3D space with a chart that we will then um, project onto the viewport kind of as our final activity. So this is just showing the comfort hours in the day. So green is comfortable, blue is too cold, and um, red is too hot. Um, so that's just going to help designers see that, okay, maybe in these months we can use, um, or in these months we need to use cooling strategies. We can evaluate what passive cooling strategies we would be effective, and then um, during the colder months, what active or passive heating strategies we could use. So it just kind of gives an overall idea of comfort um, relative to the month. Um, so let's bring this um, or let's project this onto the viewport so we can have all the data that we need showing up here. All right. So this is the monthly comfort hours chart. And so what we're doing is we're splitting the numbers and the strings. Um, we're removing or we're taking that monthly data, and then um, we're testing it against uh, the known comfort temp range, allowing us to get the percentages based on that month. So we take that data, we put it into a bar chart, um, which then charts it here. And then we use the data also to create our tags to show the percentages of comfort or not comfortable. Um, and then we project that, or then and now we're going to project that onto the screen. So we got to find the location first. So like we've done before, you want to pull out a um, render mesh to screen component, and then throw that mesh um, or locate the mesh, sorry, from the output. Plug that into the input, and then you're going to want to add a point for the location, and then you're going to want to add a scale factor so that we can um, accurately scale it to fit in the viewport. All right. So let's see if we can find this thing. All right, there we go. Look at that. Scale that down. I'm gonna bring it over to the bottom right. We're gonna change the range to ready. And now what I'm gonna want to do is take these labels that are also, I believe, mesh objects. No, I'm gonna pull out a panel just to make sure. Yep. And then I'm gonna bring those into the mesh to screen. So now we can see that those labels are still pretty small. Um, I went through a process to um, scale these labels up and then move them to the appropriate location. So let's change that max to 20 and then bring up the label size as well as move those values down. There we go. So what's happening here is I'm grabbing the graph labels and then I'm shifting all the meshes that I don't need out of the list. Um, and once I get the labels that I want, I then, given that they're all 3 letters, I remove um, the 2 letters on the outside um, in order to get the mesh, the inside mesh, or the inside letter of the month, in order to then get the centroid of that mesh so that I can scale the whole thing um, uniformly. And then I'm moving that mesh because when you do that, when you scale these objects, the uh, information ends up underneath the bar in the bar chart. So then I move that mesh in a negative direction, um, or yeah, in a negative Y direction, um, so that it's more legible. Anyways, so that's how I'm getting that data. And then I'm also up here, we have some percentages that are 0 and that was really just cluttering the graph. Um, and so what I did was I um, removed or culled those list objects or list items um, out so that we want to have as a percentage of 0, um, cleaning up the graph kind of a little bit more. Um, so we're also going to want to take those or this information as well and project it onto um, onto the screen. Hmm. All right, so let's hide that mesh object. And hide that. Alrighty. So, um, thank you, Jake, for letting me know that all that I was explaining wasn't on the screen. I am not used to one monitor, so sorry about that. Um, um, yeah, so what I was talking about is I'm essentially taking those labels, those mesh objects, I'm shifting that list to get rid of the information I don't need. Um, and then I am looking to get the center mesh of the month, so the center letter, so that I have a center point I can scale from, which is why I'm using mesh area to plug into the scale. I am transforming the list from a single list into a tree structure with lists of 3, since I know that they are all um, all the months are abbreviated with 3 letters, which then allows me to um, scale all 3 mesh objects um, with one center point, instead of having to scale each letter based on its own center point, which would essentially be messy if you scaled those letters too large, and they would overlap. So that's the reasoning for getting this list into a tree structure of 3 list objects or list items, and then moving those objects in the negative y direction. Um, so that is um, what I was talking about as my screen, um, as my Grasshopper canvas was off the screen. Um, it becomes difficult to split the window and design the layout of the viewport, just because um, as you scale, I'm going to put that off and then bring it back on, I promise. As you scale your viewport, um, the graphs are going to scale with it. However, if the ratio is not the same, then the graphs on the right hand side are going to be cropped out. Um, so probably should look at that um, as a constraint, a layout constraint. But the reason I have it the way I do is so that a user can center their model in between the graphs, which I think is helpful. Um, so that you have, I think it allows you to have a little bit more workable um, or better modeling environment as opposed to just completely um, blocking this entire part of the screen. Um, and then if I was able to fit all four of these graphs just in this area, um, the information's probably going to be too small for it to actually be useful. And this sun path diagram is probably too small as well in its current state. Um, so I found this as the happy medium, uh, and I don't feel like it's as intrusive um, to the design process. Um, so yeah, that is, I guess, the logic behind the layout. So now I've got to figure out how to get these data labels onto the screen. So we have been typically um, taking the labels as a mesh. Let's see, because these are considered text objects. All right. Let's see where I found this. Human. All right, render text to screen. Location. All right, let's hope this transfers. Oh, text. That's right. And then location. No. So if I take this location, I think they're all going to compile into one spot. You're not going to be able to see them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to going to transform their location um, into the correct location. All right. All righty. So that is interesting. It looks like they have been swapped. So we have 100. Yes. This is going to be fun. I don't think reversing these is going to do what I would like it to do, but it doesn't hurt to try. No. So that's the same thing. All right. Mm, if I mirrored, I can't mirror it either. I could potentially mirror the location. This is getting um, pretty janky. Um, I don't think that's gonna work. All right, so let's see if we can move this and at least get it close to the location that we want. I think if we just do a simple move, Z, X. I'm not entirely sure if you can move. If you can do two transformations in one, I believe you can. We'll find out. Let's do 25. So let's turn that tag off. Turn off that preview. And now, perfect. Turn that to 500. Um, why? That is the reason, probably. There we go. Yes. All right. So we're just gonna go that route. I'm not convinced that's the most effective way to go about it. Um, but for now, it's gonna work. Take that scale factor as well, bring it down. That's not a scale factor, that is the size. So take it to 12. All right, so that's gonna have to change the color and the font. So that might not be the right component to use. Render curve to screen, mesh, point, text to screen. I don't think I can turn that into a mesh object. Um, text to mesh. Alrighty. Alright. So wombat. Alright. This might be my best option. And then I can text outlines. Location. Bold. Size. Face. Alright. So we're going to remove that text to screen. Take a mesh component. Turn these text outlines. Oof, that's ugly. And we're not going to do that. Just going to leave them as outlines for now. And then we're going to use, sorry, Wombat is not a standard plugin that we install. Which I would like to avoid using another plugin for this heads-up display, but for the time being, I'm going to use this in order to uh, finish version 0.1 for the heads-up display, but also give myself a reminder um, so that I don't forget. All right, so let's project. Let's render the curve to the screen. And let's see if using the same location and scale will work. Alrighty, so clearly it's not working. But it looks like it's in the same order. So really what I can do is take that, get rid of these components as that seem to be a dead end. Remove that panel, bring this component back. And then change the location. So the x coordinate is going to be here. in the y coordinate. Oof. And the scale also needs to be adjusted. So we'll also do that here. I did not expect to run into this issue. And then the color needs to be something different. Color swatch. Ready. I wonder if we can set this to 0.1 or 0.5. I don't believe it goes anything below 1. Scale with viewport. Maybe that was what the issue was here. Wait, hold up. There we go. Kind of. We'll see how this fares when I do scale the viewport. This might not work out very well. Oof. That's fantastic. We're gonna probably want this to be to the right hand side of the graph, given the oof. Alrighty, that's not terrible. We'll move it up a little bit. Let's that preview. And 46, 46, yep, same thing. All right. So gonna move this down a little bit. There we go. All right. And then we'll probably want to increase that scale factor a little bit so that information is easier to read, and then move this information over. All right. So now when we bring this over here, we have that information. The um, the labels are a little difficult to read, but I think they do the job for now. And it seems to be pretty stable. Not much flickering, which is good. Um, all right, so I think what we'll do also moving forward is being able to kind of correlate these um, charts to one another. So um, allowing us to see the comfort, the temperature where people are comfortable. So we'll have some kind of indication that this range is the comfortable range for the average for each hour for the temperature, sorry, and then tie it back to the color of this graph so that when people look here, they can clearly understand how these two can potentially relate um, and just kind of tie everything together. Um, and then, like we talked about before, um, kind of overhauling this user interface. This might be version 0.1, but um, I realized during the creation of it that we need to break out these chart types into their own container, since each of those components have a series of options in of themselves. So um, yeah, just allowing our designers and the regenerative design team to dig into the data as much as they want and have time for, but also not um, limit that ability. We don't want to make it too simple um, and miss something that the data is going to reveal to us. Um, so yeah, with that, we will be posting the Grasshopper file on the YouTube video um, under in the description. So look for that link in the coming days just to get access to um, this initial Grasshopper file. Then you can build up on your own. And yeah, this will be the last environmental um, analysis dashboard live stream. We'll see you next week for another live stream on a different topic. So, uh, yeah, as always, do good work and work smarter, not harder. All right, this is Noah signing off. Bye.